Hi everybody, today's lesson is going to be on how to read a guitar chord chart. So here I've got a grid laid out on the right hand side. This is going to represent our chord chart, and here on the left I've got a little diagram of a hand. So I want you to hold up your left hand to the screen, and you can see that each one of your fingers is going to be numbered. First finger is your index, second finger is your middle finger, third finger is your ring finger, fourth finger is your pinky finger. Sometimes the thumb is used also, but we're not going to do that today. So basically these circles with the indicating finger number is going to exist on top of the chart, and that's going to tell us where to place our fingers. So there's a few other things that you need to take note of when you're looking at the chart. There will also be indications above the chart. So for example, here you might see an open circle like that. That's going to indicate that that string should be played open. And then in the case of this chord, you'll see that there might be an X here, which indicates that this string should either be muted or avoided. To further orient ourselves properly, we can count down, imagining that this is the nut. This would be the first fret, the second fret, third fret. So now we know that the third finger must be on the A string at the third fret. Okay, let's take a look at another chord. So this is an A major chord, and as we can see, the first finger lives here, second finger here, third finger here. But also we need to pay attention for those other markers above. So in the case of this chord, there's going to be an open string here and an open string here, and this E string is going to be avoided or muted. Now, sometimes on some charts, you may see something that looks like this, but the A is filled in. And that can be a little confusing because why is this one filled in and this one is not filled in? And that's just basically trying to indicate to you where the root note of the chord exists, because in this particular case, A, which is the root of A major, exists on the open string. If we go ahead and apply our logic from before, this being the first fret, this being the second fret, now we can see that the first finger here, this finger, exists on the second fret of the D string, right? So it's not too hard. Once you kind of understand how the little visual map works, it can be pretty easy to create your chords. Second finger, this finger, exists on the G string at the second fret. All right, in this example, we're looking at a G major chord. This is the first position. And we're going to see that up here, we're going to have to mark out our open strings. And we're going to count down our frets. First fret, second fret, third fret. So on the third fret, we're going to be playing the third finger on the E string. Then our second finger is going to live on the A string at the second fret. See? And then way over here, our fourth finger, or pinky, is going to be on the high E, also at the third fret. Here we've got an example of an E major chord. And on the E major chord, the low E string is going to be open. The B string is also going to be open. And then the high E is also going to be open. So all of this happens on the second fret, and this happens on the first fret. And if we need to know where to orient the second finger on that fret, it's on the A string. Here we've got the D major chord. So on the D major chord, the root note happens on the D string, so that one is open, and these two strings are muted or avoided. So one thing I want to take note of right now is that these are the common or the most agreed upon ways of playing these chords. So you can use different fingering arrangements, and some people do, depending on their abilities or their preferences. But this is a good place to get started, and you'll be able to find those common shapes that people utilize on these chord charts. Here we have a D minor chord. On the D minor chord, the root note still happens on the open D string, and these two are also muted out. And really, if you take note, all we did was take the note that was here and move it down. and that creates a D minor. Here we've got an A minor chord. And here we have an example of an E minor chord. Take note that there's lots of open strings on this one. Another common type of chord that you might find on the guitar is what's called a power chord. So here I've drawn it actually a few frets down. So this is 1, 2, 3, giving us the 3rd fret. And we're utilizing our 1st finger here and our 3rd finger here. And then in this case, all of these other strings over here are going to be muted out. So this is called a G5, technically, and the term that a lot of people use is power chord. A power chord is one of the early simple examples of a movable shape in the form of a chord. So if we take this shape that we've made with the 1 and the 3rd finger, and we move it over to the A string root, now we have another kind of power chord that's built on the A string root. Okay, so now I want to take a look at a bar chord. So here I've got a bar chord written out, and I've got it labeled G major bar. And you'll notice that it's sitting at the top of the chord chart, which would mean that it's in the wrong position. So normally what you'll see is a little number indicating here that it begins on the 3rd fret. And in this way, we can continue to use the same chart, usually just across 4 frets for the most part. And that allows you to have the same shape and just direct where it should begin by putting an indicating number next to it. Another one of the more important parts of the bar chord is the bar itself. So basically what that means is your 1st finger is going to be all the way across all of these frets. And that's indicated usually by putting the number 1 over and over again, or having this arching line like I drew. Sometimes people will just put a big block or bar across the top like this as well. So both of those are the same thing, they're just different styles of writing. So this major bar chord shape that begins on the E string root is also an example of a movable shape. And so what we can do is we can think about this note here. If we now imagine that note as our root note, whatever root note we place it on the E string root, it will then change to that chord. So right now we have it on 3, which gives us a G. But if we moved up to, for example, 4, then that would give us a G sharp major. Or if we moved up to 5, that would give us an A major bar chord. If I take this note here and I move that finger up into the bar, removing it altogether, then I actually have a whole new shape, which is a 7 shape. Okay, so I want to stop thinking about the fingers for a second. Instead, look at the pattern as a shape. So this shape here, depending on what root note on the E string you put it on, will be a 7 chord. It can be any 7 chord, and your guide is which fret you place it on the E string. If I move this shape back down to where it was before, this gives us a movable major chord shape from the E string root. By altering the shape like this, we now have a movable minor chord shape from the E string root. If we modify the shape by moving this up here, we get a minor 7 chord. Now I want you to take note that all we have to do is change the root position. So for example, if I keep this chord shape and I put it on the 8th fret, then I'm going to have a C minor 7 chord. If I put it on the 10th fret, I'm going to have a D minor 7 chord. If I put it on the 5th fret, I'm going to have an A minor 7 chord. If I put it on the 3rd fret, I'm going to have a G minor 7 chord. And in this way, you can learn one shape and then apply it all across the neck to get multiple chords. Okay, so we can do the same thing from the A string root. What I want to do real quick is I want to take this chord shape, okay, and I'm going to move it up here. So now that bar chord doesn't live on the fretboard anymore, but what you can see is an A major chord. And this is basically the idea that whatever chord you build in the first position, you can then create a bar for it and then move that around. In effect, what you're doing with the bar, what you're doing is basically making a capo, right? You're going across the fretboard and changing the scale length, or how short the guitar's range is. So this bar that you've created here is kind of just like changing the position of the nut. So this is our movable major shape from the A string root. If we put this on the 2nd fret, then we would get a B major. If we put this on the 5th fret, then we would get a D major. So now I'm going to move this shape around. If I take this and I put it up here, we'll notice that this area here is the same shape as an A minor chord, which means that what we have made is a movable minor shape from the A string root. And now we have a 7 shape built from the A string root. Remember, this is movable, so if we put it on the 7th fret, it would be an E7. If we put it on the 8th fret, it would be an F7. If we put it on the 2nd fret, it would be a B7. If we put it on the 12th fret, it would be an A7. Finally, we have a minor 7 shape. So this is a movable minor 7 shape built on the A string root. And if you take note, this area here is the exact same shape as the A minor 7 chord in the 1st position. And so that's a way that you can remind yourself of how to build different chords in a bar chord shape. A lot of people ask me, oh, I want to play rock music. Why do I need to learn cowboy chords or 1st position chords? And this is exactly why, because all of these chord shapes are movable. And if you learn them, you can apply them to all kinds of positions on the neck. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time.